recordings downloaded. I think that may be because this is the holiday season and Skype servers are swamped.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
so maybe later we'll be able to get our downloads. And if that's the case, then every time I retry to download the same one over and over again and can't do it,
Mm.
I'm actually causing more problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The more I try, the longer it'll be before I get it. So it's better just to stop trying for a while. But anyway, that's what's going on is that things are not being downloaded. So it may take a while before um, we publish this on YouTube.
Yeah.
Uh, but anyway, back to the point where we were going with this
Yeah.
is that um, the word dukkha actually is uh, used in a more subtle way.
Mm-hmm.
And that a better way of looking at it or speaking of it in English would be dissatisfying or
Mm-hmm.
unsatisfactory, not
Mm-hmm.
up to scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we use language that indicates that the feeling is already built in. And so in order then to convey feeling, we often, let us say, become grandiose, or that
Mm.
we make it bigger than it is. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, if I'm annoyed, when I describe it to someone, I've got to be really annoyed, not
Mm-hmm.
just annoyed. And we wind up living our lives in a world of grandiosity,
Mm-hmm.
to where the language doesn't fit the reality, it fits the emotional reality instead.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Okay. So our language then determines often how we feel, though we don't know that. And so even when I pick up on a word like ache,
Mm-hmm.
I say, aha, I've got a thread I can pull.
Right. Well, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I would use the word ache. I could also use the word a tightness or constriction, sort of, or like a
All right. Well, that's closer to
pinching
reality.
sort of feeling. Um, yeah. So that's what happened in that sit. I had a sit maybe yesterday where it felt like a tightness in my chest area. Um,
Okay. Would you believe me when I would say that many people would use that tightening with the word anxiety?
um, Usually for me, anxiety is expressed in my stomach. Um, but I mean that's also just language. So I
Yes,
mean,
that's exactly what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting at is this language. Now, here's the thing that's kind of interesting, and that is no one is for sure that all of the other people around them agree with them when they use the color green or the
right,
word
right, right, right,
green.
right.
That
Mm-hmm.
we don't know what other people see.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
That our reality is in fact not real, it's
Mm-hmm.
mentally manufactured.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, though the sensation in the back will be a real sensation, the language that we use to describe it
Right.
may not be a very good description, because what we're talking about then is how we feel about it
Mm-hmm.
rather than what it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a great deal of Buddhism is, in fact, all about bringing us closer and closer to reality
Mm-hmm.
through a deeper investigation.
Mm-hmm.
So, we
So,
investigate the language we use and we investigate the feelings that we have, etc., like that.
right. So the sensation in the back that I was experiencing, I would describe as unpleasant and solid. So I wasn't able to detect a lot of, or really any vibrations or anything. It seemed pretty, um, yeah,
You use the
pretty,
word tight.
yeah, tight. I'd say it's probably the size of like a $50, maybe.
Okay, so you're inspecting it to see the size of it. A lot of people, you see, when they know that there's tightness there, they
Mm-hmm.
don't like it, so they don't want to pay attention to it, almost in denial.
Mm-hmm.
But in fact, by investigating it, you'll begin to see that it's not solid, that it does in fact have some movement
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the closer that you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's other things to do besides sit in pain, thinking that we're watching it and getting insight from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is that it's okay to move while you're doing the investigation to see how things change.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact you may find some relief
Mm-hmm.
by stretching arms, elbows, twisting the back, standing up. There's all kinds of things that you can do that
Mm-hmm.
would be part of the investigation.
Okay.
That is not necessary to sit still.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in fact, one of the things that is good for those, I have several different kinds of students. And
Okay.
one of the kinds of students have come after doing retreats a lot. Others come from having read particular books from
Right.
particular ways. And that many of the students also come with the idea that this that the sitting practice is bigger and more important than it might actually be. Some students will come, in fact, to Buddhism with the thinking that everything about Buddhism is sitting meditation. Therefore, we can keep the sitting meditation and throw all of the Buddhism out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And others will say, well, all right, if that's how you want to live, then you can spend 14 to 18 hours of day sitting and dealing with back pains and things like that, or bliss, depending upon your mental state.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can actually have a real life that you can live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which would you prefer?
Well, at the moment, I'd like to get to a place where I feel satisfied. So, at the moment, I'm kind of locked into my current situation, but I've thought about going on an extended retreat, maybe
Okay.
within a year or so, but we'll
Well, my
see.
first question would have been when you
Hmm.
said locked into a situation, were you talking about a job or sitting in meditation? Because
Uh,
both of them are a way of getting locked into a situation.
yeah, it's a job, career, licensing sort of situation, as well as a lease on, my apartment. So, um, yeah, kind of locked in and from many different angles. Um,
Ah, that reminds me of a joke.
okay, let's hear it.
Um, the striving young spiritual seeker finally, after a lot of efforts and trips and whatnot, finally climbs to the high ledge in the mountains where the
Yeah.
guru was sitting so he
Okay.
could ask his question.
Mhm.
And the question was, what is the key to the universe?
Mhm.
And the old guru says, I don't know what the key to the universe is. And so, all dejected and everything, this guy climbed all the way up there. So now he's got to go find another guru.
Right.
And seeing that the guy was dejected, the guru says, "But aha, the key to the universe is unnecessary because the universe has been left unlocked."
Ah, great. Mm-hmm. It's good.
And so here you are feeling locked in,
Mm-hmm.
to where in fact that might be a delusion.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
All right. So everything is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that you probably understand easily is something the Buddha teaches about some sort of baseline, whereby if we fall below that baseline, there will be dissatisfaction and leading all the way into suffering.
Mm-hmm.
But above that baseline, we're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so that baseline then would be best described as the four requisites, in the sense that we've got enough food, we've got enough housing, we've got sufficient clothing, and sufficient medical care. Now, surprisingly enough, a lot of people in the United States don't have those basic things,
Right. Mm-hmm.
partly because they don't know how to get them. But the point is that if you do come up to that level to where you've got just the basics and no more, then you don't need a bigger house. That a tiny house will do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the purpose of the house is mostly to be secure at night.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you live in a house or an apartment or whatever that gets broken into on a regular basis, then that's inadequate housing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That you need a certain amount of security for the housing to be housing, is for protection. Same as with clothing, just enough clothing, in the sense that if you don't have enough clothing on, then mosquitoes will bite, the cops will arrest, girls will boo, snakes will hiss, and all kinds of things. And so there's a certain amount of clothing that's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Ergo, when I go to town, I put on a shirt. Other than that, nothing doing.
Yeah, you get some warmer weather than I do.
But that was out of choice,
Oh yeah, sure.
out of wisdom. I had to say as I hold my nose in the air. But that's the whole point is that we do have choices,
Mm-hmm.
that you are not locked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it is a choice, which I acknowledge. Yeah.
And so mostly what we're going to be working on is not trying to change the environment so much as learning how to allow it to be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
There are many ways of saying the entire teaching of the Buddha in just one little phrase. I mean, it's really a simple teaching. The Buddha used the word dukkha, dukkha, nirodha, and that meant something to him.
Mm-hmm.
Another way of saying it would be the way Goenka said it, never mind, start again.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or there's the phrase, don't worry, be happy. Or another one would be out of the Snow White movie of whistle while you work. Da 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 da.
What is it? What is that last one?
Whistle while you work.
Whistle while you work. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Whistle while you work. Or begin to enjoy what you're doing in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you can work at that from both directions.
Mm-hmm.
One is the direction of beginning to change how you feel, but the other one is through the inspection, so that you can figure out what kind of things need to be done and what things don't need to be done. Now, along the way with that, you'll find a whole lot of things that need to be done But there's other people who are very, very happy. In fact, they're ferociously interested in getting that stuff done so you don't have to. Like
Mhm.
getting the car started, or
Mhm.
global warming, or getting Trump impeached, or all kinds of things. We can just say, not my worries, not my problem. So many other people see that need also.
Yeah. Mm.
And so there's a whole world of things that we think that we should do because they need to be done without understanding that, well, let humanity do what humanity needs to be doing.
Mhm.
That right now, currently, my job is to fix my own wagon, to get my own head back, to
Mhm.
get to literally to fix this mess
Mhm. Yeah.
so that I can come to a point of living my life happily.
Mhm.
That's basically what the Dhamma is all about. And so the question would be, well, how does sitting meditation fit into that? Well, the number one answer to that is that in sitting meditation, there's a few skills that we're intentionally going to develop. The very skills that we're going to need when we're out in the world.
Mhm.
And the number one skill to be developed is the skill of sati. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that sitting meditation is e- either wrong or unnecessary. It's, huh, how to say it? In a way, we could go so far as to say that sitting meditation is neither necessary nor sufficient,
Mhm.
but it is useful.
Mhm.
It's like a catalyst that has that the quality of getting things going.
Mhm.
Uh, let's say that you had an eight-cylinder car and it only ran on six cylinders and two of them were malfunctioning. You can
Mhm.
still go along.
Mhm.
Those two cylinders are not necessary,
Mhm.
and that the six that we have operating are sufficient. However, if I got the car fixed so that it ran on all eight cylinders, it would be much more satisfying, much more satisfactory.
Mhm. Mhm.
All right, so that's the way of beginning to look at the sitting practice is that we've got a job to do. And that job is to get the mind basically fit for work so that we can do the investigation that needs to be done.
Mhm.
But the investigation itself is going to be done all day long,
Mhm.
but that we're going to get the mind fit for work. And that fit for work means that we're developing the skill of sati.
Mhm.
We're developing the skill of supramundane right view. And supramundane right view, by the way, is let's keep looking at it. Let's stop coming to conclusions.
Mhm.
Let's recognize that our concepts are just concepts and let's keep looking at it. Let's find a new analogy. Let's keep asking, keep
Mhm.
looking, keep noting. And so that's one's right view. And that thinking that we've got the answer or solved the problem is often frustrating, especially since our solutions don't work. But if we don't come to a conclusion or a solution,
Mhm.
then we don't have to feel bad.
Mhm.
We can just keep keep investigating.
Mhm.
And now most of the conclusions that people came to and continue to hold are the same conclusions they came to when they were children. And it's through this investigation process that we begin to wake up to what the real world is all about, rather than the one that the child created for himself
Mhm.
based upon the inadequate information that he got from the people around him. That we have to do this growing up ourselves. We have to open our eyes and take a close look. And so this is what the real practice is all about, is getting those skills. And so sati and right view and putting in one's right effort. And getting the right effort then will develop the right attitude. These are all
Mm-hmm.
factors of the Eightfold Noble Path,
Mm-hmm.
as well as they're the foundation for how to practice anapanasati.
I have a question that seems to be related. So, one thing that I've noticed is I find it a lot easier to change my emotional state when I'm not sitting, because I can use my body, my physicality. I can start, jumping around or clapping my hands, really quickly, and that seems to really brighten um, my my mood, my mind, whatever. Whereas when I'm sitting, I'm told, well, my general idea of what you're supposed to do while sitting is to sit and be still. And so it's more difficult for me to brighten my mood by just using verbal thoughts and mental images. So,
Okay.
yeah,
So let me ask you this. Who told you that?
that's how I'm supposed to sit.
Yeah.
I guess that's just kind of the instructions I received. But it seems like
Right.
you're about to tell me something differently. So,
Well, we're questioning everything.
right. Okay.
Okay. So in that questioning then,
Mm.
um, first off, do you even know who told you that, or do you have an idea? Did you read it out of a book, or did you
Yeah,
take a
probably.
retreat, or
Yeah, yeah.
have you ever done a Goenka retreat?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. So maybe you got the idea from the Goenka folks.
No, I mean, I probably got it from when I first saw some guy meditating when I was a teenager, sitting still. And
Uh-huh.
anywhere you go, as far as I've seen in different meditation centers or online or movies or whatever, meditation is always, you're still.
All right. So let me put it
Or
this way.
walking meditation, but
One one of the major problems that humans have, though we do understand the issue of cause and effect, we often get them backwards.
mm-hmm,
We often see the effect and think that's the cause because we
mm-hmm,
saw it first. So
mm-hmm.
here's my question. Would still sitting be the results of a clear mind, or would still sitting cause the clear mind?
Um, Well, I guess maybe it can work both ways. I'm not.
Well, that's correct. Yes, it is.
Uh-huh.
What you could say, in fact, would be something on the order of operating both at the mundane and the supramundane at the more or less together or in harmony with each other, rather than doing one and then doing the other.
Mm-hmm.
An example of that would be, have you ever heard of the Pali word sila?
Is that morality?
Yes, okay. Or other words would be virtue, etc., like that.
Uh-huh.
Now, um, one of the um, really important similes that the Buddha has, I think it's in Sutra number 36 in the Majjhima Nikaya,
Mm-hmm.
is a simile that I refer to um, so that the students can easily remember it, is the log in the bog.
Okay.
The log in the bog is in a swamp. You have a fallen tree that's mostly submerged. In the time of the Buddha, there were fire makers whose profession was to make fire.
Mm-hmm.
Could the fire maker go out into the bog and set that log on fire?
Probably not. It's what?
No, not. I mean, we might with a blowtorch or put it in a some sort of furnace, but that's taking it out of the bog.
Right.
Okay, so if we took the log up onto the shore,
Mm-hmm.
could then it be set on fire?
Yeah. If it dried
Well,
out.
it's soaking wet,
Right. It has to dry out.
so it has to dry out. Precisely. Now we're getting there. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So this is what the quality of seclusion is about from the time of the Buddha. That the going off and sitting cross-legged. This stuff is in the suttas
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
about sitting under a tree or in a hut, an abandoned hut, or someplace
Mm-hmm.
like that. But
Mm-hmm.
the intention is not for a particular sitting posture. It's to get the mind secluded, to get it away.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the whole point about one's individual practice
Mm-hmm.
is to get the body and the human away from all of the distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of making the body sit still, what happens is that because we're completely free from distractions, the body will naturally sit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in Thailand, the kids sit on the floor their whole lives.
Mm-hmm.
In Western society, the kids are grabbed off the floor and put into a high chair,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't play on the floor much. And if they do, they've got carpet or whatever. But in Thailand, the children learn these postures and maintain these postures their whole lives. But Westerners come in and try to sit in strange postures, and they have a lot of pain. I've I've got she's actually a stepdaughter that I've known since 13, and she's in university now. But when she's eating her food, she always sits in the full lotus posture, and she's
Mm-hmm.
not the only one. Just an example.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the Westerners will strive and strive trying to get into the lotus posture,
Mm-hmm.
or um, let us say, become complicit with a lesser posture like the Burmese or something like that. In the Zen posture, they don't use the Zen bench. The Zen bench is for the people who haven't learned to sit on their heels. The
Mm-hmm.
real Zen posture is to sit on your heels,
Right. Mm-hmm.
which is a very common posture for people who spend all their time on the floor. They learn to squat and stay squatted for long periods of time, and many Westerners can't squat at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Squatting means that you've got your butt within an inch of the floor, but you're still standing on your feet.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these are strange postures that are very common in Asia, but are difficult for the Westerners simply because of literally the way that our bones have been growing for the past 1,000 years or more. We've been off the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing to take into consideration is that you're not there for posture.
Mm-hmm.
You're there for something else, and the posture is not so important.
Mm-hmm.
What is important is to develop these skills.
Mm-hmm.
Now, um, we could go so far as to say that in this regard, there's two Buddhisms. There is the Buddhism of the ordinary, which is the beginner's Buddhism, and then there is the Buddhism of the noble. But
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, so many people stay at the ordinary level their whole lives that I'm not even sure that we can use the Buddhism for the noble. So we'll call it the teachings of the Buddha. But in that regard, they both have an Eightfold Noble Path. But the Eightfold Noble Path for the beginner or the ordinary Buddhist religion starts with Sila, Samadhi, Panya. You probably heard that order.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that in fact, the Sila, Samadhi, Panya is in the suttas for a particular reason. But then, in the normal way that the sutta, or let us say the Eightfold Noble Path, is laid out in the sense of Panya. or right view comes first in right attitude,
Mm-hmm.
then sila, and then samadhi.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that the Buddha actually taught it was not in that order or in either one of those. That in fact that he talked about right view, right effort, working together, then right sati. So right view, right sati, right effort, leading to right attitude,
Mm-hmm.
then brought the mind to um, a place of samadhi. And in this regard, we're talking about it is the mind is unified.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the mind is unified, then the behavior or sila will be great.
Mm-hmm.
So in that regard, you could say that the Buddha's method would be panya samadhi sila.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way that it actually operates in practice when you're practicing it correctly. But the way that it's taught is sila samadhi panya.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But the sila is basically understood wrong because the way that you're looking at sila is to sit still, which has its value. But that the important point about the sila is that we are secluded.
Mm-hmm.
When you're completely away from other people, then your sila is correct.
Mm-hmm.
When you're sitting alone, when you got your eyes closed, when you're not doing anything, not going anywhere, then your behavior is excellent, at least on
Mm-hmm.
the outside. Depends upon what you're thinking on the inside. You may be plotting a robbery or planting a bomb or whatever like that.
Uh-huh.
So let's say then that our sila has to do also with the inside of the mind to begin to seclude ourselves from unwholesome thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the real sila is all about, is secluding ourselves from the world so that we can practice. Basically, what we're doing is we're practicing getting that log dried out so that
Mm-hmm.
we can literally set it on fire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another way of looking at all of the bog that's still in the log, that's all of our sankara, all of our old ways of doing things. In short, it's our society, not the society as a whole or in general, but that part of the society that I brought into my own mind.
Yeah.
That's the society, is my view of society.
Mm.
And that view of society is, in fact, the problem. And the Buddha has a term for this. It's called Silabhata Paramasa, and it
Mm-hmm.
is also referred to as the second fetter.
Okay.
Okay? So all of this ties together. The second fetter of Silabhata Paramasa
Mm-hmm.
means attachments to rites, rules, rituals,
Mm-hmm.
is how it's described. But if you'll think about it, actually, the word law should be put in there too. Not in the
Mm-hmm.
sense of natural law like gravity and causality and nuclear force and electromagnetic and that kind of law,
Mm-hmm.
but more like speed limit kind of laws.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're talking about the laws that society set up with the government. But basically, little children are taught um, let us say kids go to primary school and first grade before they go to law school. Let's say it like that.
Okay.
And so we as children actually do learn it as rules and rituals. This is the way to do things. And we go along to get along.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are now, you're trying to go along with this meditation so that you can get along with it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
without really inspecting it closely.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is part of Silabhata Paramasa is that, oh, you're supposed to sit still.
Right.
Rather
Mm-hmm.
than, oh, well, maybe still sitting is what happens when uh, we are peaceful and secluded and got no place to go, and the posture is not so important and has more to do with circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
So the little chair that I'm sitting on is good enough all the time. I don't have to go squat on the floor. The squatting on the floor is what the Asians do, because the kids who become monks have been squatting on the floor their whole life, and they continue to squat on the floor as monks the same way they've always been squatting on floors. These
Mm-hmm.
Westerners come in and say, "Oh, I've got to squat on the floor in order to get any results."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. That your sitting posture is not as important as what your mental posture is, and the mental
Mm-hmm.
posture is, we're here to develop skills intentionally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so let's look at it from that position, that your actual posture, it's okay to shift the posture if
Mm-hmm.
you feel better after you've shifted it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to take a note of it first, to look closely at what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point, is let's follow the practice correctly rather than following it as a, let us say, a plan of progress.
Mm-hmm.
And so they start with Sila. In fact, in Sutra number 24, it talks about Sila, and then in the sense of purification of morality, then it's purification of mind, and then purification of view. Well, that is really well understood in the sense of Sutta number 48, that the Sila then is not getting away from it all physically. It's getting away from it all mentally, and it can be expressed in this way. This is the first truth, and it's stated this way, is that no matter how obstructed the mind is, we can clean it out and come back to the reality of the moment and see things as they really are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when one has the knowledge that no matter how obstructed the mind is, they can keep coming back and coming back, then that knowledge and that can do attitude, because it really is an attitude. It's not just a knowledge, it's the knowledge that you can do this. And that's the first knowledge that is noble, supramundane, a factor of the noble path, and
Mm-hmm.
is also not shared by ordinary people.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact, there are times even now that you'll have doubt about whether you can do it or not.
Mm-hmm.
There will come a time when you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that any time that you recognize that your mind has wandered away, or that you're feeling bad, or that you've got an ache in the back, or any of that kind of stuff, you can say,
Mm-hmm.
I can come out of that.
Mm-hmm.
I can. That I am not, let us say, bound by some old set of rules,
Mm-hmm.
that I am not bound by destiny, that I'm only bound by these rules because I think that I should follow the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will say, well, don't follow the rules, follow your heart. Well, basically, what that means is following a different set of rules.
Mm-hmm.
What we're talking about here is don't follow any rules, don't follow your heart. Look at where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Watch closely what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the right way to practice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you will come to that first knowledge, which is actually the knowledge that I can seclude myself.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we actually see that we can perfect our silas, because every time that we see that the mind has wandered away, we can come back to the breath and start again. And we know we can do this. And that is the first knowledge that is supramundane and a factor of the path. Now, what the Buddha means by that is that this is the first step on the step to Sotapan. Now, depending upon whether you want to have step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 on this, as to whether you're all Sotapan or you're just merely on the first step, which is the Sotapan, the one who is on the first step, or the one who is fully completed with all 7 knowledges. I'm going to let those who are attached to that word figure that one out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because each one of them, if you understand it correctly, that becoming a sotapan is a long, long process.
Mm-hmm.
That in fact, many of them who even claim to be sotapan have never made that first step. One of them even says, "Well, things have become. I'm a sotapan now, but life is still mundane. So where do I go from here?"
Mm-hmm.
The answer is, throw those thoughts out of the mind, come back to the present moment, enjoy the heck out of it. That's what the sotapan, the beginning of the sotapan, is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Is that no matter what kind of silly thoughts I come up with, I am not attached to them. I can throw them out, and I can come back to this present moment over and over and over again. By doing that, we're developing a whole set of skills. The first skill is we remember to do that. We don't just let the mind wander around in mundane crap,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that I'm a soda pond in the mundane crap. What do I do now? Because that's doubt, clinging to a label, all kinds of stuff that is not conducive to correct practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, um, the next one is after we remember to wake up out of that stuff. Now we actually have to say, yes, let's forget about that. And we have to do several things. One is gladden the mind, and another one is to take a deep breath or two or a dozen and
Mm-hmm.
come back to the here now. That takes effort in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But after we get used to it, all we have to do is think about it. And immediately the effort is turned into an energy, and all of a sudden you're taking a deep breath. Immediately you're taking a deep breath as you're throwing that stuff out. Aha, I caught you. Aha, that stuff is out of here.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when the effort becomes correct. Now, normally people don't have correct effort.
Mm-hmm.
They either have too little effort or too much effort. When there's too little effort, we can call it choiceless awareness.
Okay.
Choiceless awareness. Imagine that we were standing in the middle of the road and here comes a big truck bearing right down on you, and you
Right.
see it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You see it. All you have to do is step out of the way, but because you're being too lazy, choicelessly aware, you just let it run you over. Well, our thoughts
Mm-hmm.
do that too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's better to step out of the way. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to work too hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to be like Popeye and stand in the middle of the road with our big arm out after we've taken a can of spinach to knock the truck down. We don't have to do it that way.
Mm-hmm.
All we need to do is just to step out of the way. Now, in fact, there's a whole group of ways to do this. They're set out in Sutra number 20, but this first way is the way that's the easiest way. We do not have to clench our teeth and put our tongue to the top of the throat to make sure that those unwholesome thoughts are thrown out. They're really easy to throw out. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they'll come back, throw them out again. You don't have to get all scruffy and everything about clenched teeth and whatnot. You can just keep throwing it out with
Right.
the attitude, I can do this. I can throw the thoughts back out over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Because the sati comes up over and over again, and with sati, the right effort comes up over and over again, and the can do attitude comes up over and over and over again. And that can do attitude is the basis that is going to be growing into becoming a lion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what the Buddha called himself. He was a lion, which means he roared. He did not whimper. He was not a sheep man. So that budding attitude starts with no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can clean it out and start again.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm that successful. And with that success grows good feelings. So we're actually working on gathering up good feelings, and we're gladdening the mind. And that gladdening the mind then is the aha, I see you. Aha, I caught you. I don't have to feel bad when I catch the mind wandering away. I can be content and happy that I've caught it running away. And so this is also one's right effort is, aha, I can do this. let's make it easy, and so we can continue to clean the mind. This is what the sitting practice is all about. That's why we call it in the beginning mindfulness of breathing, because the breathing itself is fairly big, it's fairly gross. And
Mhm.
so we want to keep coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath until we can begin to maintain staying on the breath. When that happens, the next thing is that the student begins to recognize, now that I'm watching the breath, the thoughts are in the background, they call it, or the thoughts are still there. So now the job is to start monitoring those thoughts for which ones are wholesome and which ones are not wholesome. Well, how do we decide that? Well, the thoughts that are not wholesome are the ones that are going to take me away from the breath. And the wholesome thoughts are going to be the ones that are going to help keep me right here,
Mhm.
watching the breath.
Mhm.
So that the background thoughts then start association with this present moment, what we're doing right now.
Mhm.
Okay, so I can have thoughts of the chest, I can have thoughts of the back, I can begin to experience the body and watch the body and become satisfied with that watching.
Mhm.
And so if there's any pain that comes up, yeah, it's a good idea to look at it, but you're not bound to sit still to become dissatisfied, because if you become dissatisfied to the point that you're calling it an ache, now you want to know what to do about it. I have to sit still and I want to get rid of that ache, and now I've got a problem and I'm not
Mhm.
watching my breath anymore.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. So you need to find a way to take care so that you can continue to watch the breath and not have these kind of thoughts pull you away from it.
Mhm.
When we get to that point, then now we're actually beginning to watch the thoughts, and we're also continuing to gladden the mind, to keep the glad sharp. Well, I caught that one. Well, that pain is not a that ache is not an ache. I just called it an ache, but now I'm the champion here.
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
That little old ache is nothing compared to this big, strong frontal cortex I've got going. And so you become a master of it. A way of speaking, a student gave me this, and he says, everyone is an emperor of their own pile of dirt.
Mhm.
The question is, are you going to be buried under your pile of dirt? Are you struggling to get out of it, trying to get some breathing room? Or are you sitting on top of your world?
Mhm.
This whole attitude change is to come out from under. For me, I've got to sit here and sit still because I'm going to get something out of this meditation. Let
Mhm.
me sit here and struggle
Right. Mhm.
because that's literally working too hard.
Mhm. Mhm.
What's needed instead is a way to feel satisfied with, oh, I can deal with that. That's nothing. I can just squirm a little, or I can twist around a little bit, find out a way of relieving that tension, and we're good to go.
All right, great. I will do that.
All right. So the real intention of the sitting practice is to develop these skills.
Mhm.
And one of the skills would be the skill of being the champion,
Mhm.
the skill of being joyful. This is one's right attitude, but is also built right into the Anapanasati Sutra in the sense of it's better to feel good than it is to feel bad.
Mhm.
And so let's feel satisfied. Let's feel good. In that regard, joy is a skill to be developed.
Yeah, I've already noticed some notable differences in my mood in the past week since I started making this a priority. So
Great.
very, yeah,
Excellent.
very pleased about that.
Yes, that's the whole point now. You're beginning to see the success.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're beginning to see that you can do this. You're beginning to see it's developing confidence.
Yeah.
The Pali word for that is shraddha. They
Mm-hmm.
sometimes translate it as faith. This is not faith.
Mm.
This is solid evidence.
Uh,
This is solid evidence, and as that evidence solidifies and grows in confidence, then
mm-hmm.
it will come to the point of I can do this. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how many times the mind wanders away, I can come back. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how unhappy I get about back pain, I can get rid of it. I'm the
Mm-hmm.
champion here. I'm the one who can be in this present moment.
Yeah, it's gonna be great when I'm just 100% confident about it.
Well, no, if you're 30% confident about it, note that too, inspect it and say, yippee ki 30%, here we go all the
Yeah.
way. Don't hope for anything. Enjoy what you've got right now. And that
Mm-hmm.
is such a mental change
Mm-hmm.
because we have been taught our whole lives to work hard now to get your results later.
Yeah.
And it is almost always a bait and switch.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That you tell the kid, okay, you got to learn your ABCs, you need it. You can't graduate first grade without learning your ABCs and learning how to read. You got to learn 1, 2, 3, or you can't go into second grade where they teach addition. You got to do this so you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're saying when you get out of fourth grade, you'll get a diploma, get your picture with let us say the king of the hill, or maybe the president of the county, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to go to another school. But guess what? 4 years later, you get to go to high school. You get graduated. And then when you graduate from high school, now you get to go to college. And when you graduate from that, you go to more college or you have to get a job. But
Mm-hmm.
always the benefit is postponed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we continue to practice the old habit of doing what we're told to do and to put off the gratification.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I saw you just do.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not put off the gratification. 30% will do nicely. Thank you.
Right. I will be satisfied with 30%.
Exactly. So,
Okay.
one last story, and that is the story of Pilgrim's Progress.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that? It's an old book out of the Middle Ages, Pilgrim's Progress, very Christian oriented. You haven't. That's funny. We have to
I
learn that
think
stuff.
I think I
Google.
might have heard it in a J.D. Salinger book. I think one of his characters reads the book and is deeply influenced by it, but I don't recall it enough to
Well, that's all right. I'm going to turn this on its head anyway.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay, so the pilgrim is on a journey. They call it a pilgrimage.
Mm-hmm.
Even the big magazines in Buddhism, Tricycle of the Lion's War, whatever like that, will set up pilgrimage for people to go to India or whatever together.
Yeah, they're
All
expensive.
right. So that's the point. The pilgrimage then, or the pilgrim, is now making progress because he's on his journey. He's on the way to the holy site.
Mm-hmm.
So long as he is making progress, even if his progress is sitting on the cushion, so long as he's making progress,
Mm-hmm.
he's not there yet at the holy site. But when he gets to the holy site, wherever that may be, then he stops progressing and just enjoys where he is. A good pilgrim is not immediately going to pack his bag and off to the next holy site. No, this holy site is holy enough as it is right now, and I'm satisfied with this holy site.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, these holy sites are available with every breath.
Mm-hmm.
And in this way, the word I'm using, holy, has two contexts. One is the one that you've already got intentionally by the way that I said, but the other one is to look at as holy in the sense of unified. This is a holy site right here because the mind is unified right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's satisfied right now at 30% solidification.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so we begin more and more to say, this is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
This is satisfying. And that satisfaction is a skill that will be developed, but it is not going to be developed by being dissatisfied with your satisfaction.
Right.
Now, in the very, very beginning, the very beginner who doesn't do anything, he will tell you, oh, well, I'm not suffering, which means that he is satisfied with his dissatisfaction.
Mm.
But then the next thing that happens is the student begins to make some progress in their meditation, and now they become dissatisfied with their satisfaction.
Mm.
So the thing to do is to make one further step, and that is become satisfied with whatever it is, so that we become satisfied with being satisfied. This holy site is holy enough, it's good enough, and that's what I'm practicing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
it keeps getting better and better. Next time, but I'm not worried about next time. This is good enough right now. 31%, that's tomorrow's business.
All right. Yeah.
30% today. Okay. When we get into that state, now we really are not just purifying the mind, but we're purifying the view.
Mm-hmm.
We're really getting into the state of wisdom, is to
Mm-hmm.
keep looking at this and become satisfied with it.
Mm-hmm.
This is also step 6 of Anapanasati, and is also right attitude. You can see how all of this stuff works together to where it's just one teaching.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that one teaching is just dukkha. You see it, dukkha nirodha. We're out of it.
Yeah, I've been noticing a what will happen when I'm feeling good is a thought will then appear where it's like, is this satisfying enough? Or, it's like this doubt about like whether or not what I'm experiencing is good enough or not. And then I tell myself like, like shoo away, you little doubt thought. Like let me just try to like enjoy this. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Right. You can just say, "Ah, yeah, this is it. This is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
This holy site is holy enough. Things are together enough, and I enjoy this moment." And so that's what needs to be practiced. And you can see how this is all Eightfold Noble Path stuff. All of those elements are together as they're working together and building the skill. The skill becomes quite easy to see the value of it. And so shraddha, or confidence, grows.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that can-do attitude, the one ultimate skill that we're developing is right attitude. But we start with right view every time. So as our attitude grows, so does our view.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been a delightful conversation. Do you have any questions about this?
Um, no, I think we can call it there for tonight. Yeah, I also greatly enjoyed this conversation. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, we'll see you soon then.
Okay. Should I call you again in a few days or so?
Yeah, in a few days, that'll be good. Go practice the way that we've been talking about today.
All right,
Get
I
yourself
will.
if you get satisfied, really satisfied, you don't have to call me.
Well, if that happens, I might still want to call you.
Oh, you can call and report in. Oh, my satisfaction is just super.
I think you might want to know,
Yeah, I would like to know. Sure.
All righty.
All
All
right,
right.
David. See you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.